I'm about to reveal the truth behind 10 Western myths that will completely blow your mind. Number 7 will leave you speechless. Alright, let's jump right into it. Have you ever questioned the myths that have been passed down through generations in Western culture? Get ready to have your mind blown as we debunk 10 common Western myths that you won't believe. Stay tuned to find out the shocking truth behind number 1. First up, let's lay out the myths that we will be debunking in this video. From cowboys to hats, we've got a range of misconceptions to unravel. So, grab a seat and let's delve into the truth behind these long-standing myths. 10. Settlers versus natives? Many people imagine the Old West as a place of relentless conflict between settlers and Native American tribes, with constant raids, battles, and violence. Sure, there were skirmishes and battles, but it wasn't all war drums and warpaths. Many Native American tribes engaged in trade and formed alliances with settlers. For instance, the Lewis and Clark expedition heavily relied on the aid of Sacagawea, a Shoshone woman, to navigate and negotiate with various tribes. Far from constant enemies, there were numerous occasions of cooperation and mutual benefit. Take the Cherokee Nation, who adapted many settler ways and even had a written constitution, or the famous Thanksgiving tale, where pilgrims and the Wampanoag shared a feast. The narrative of endless war diminishes the rich, varied, and often peaceful interactions that actually occurred. 9. Bank robbers everywhere. The Wild West is often depicted as being overrun by bank-robbing outlaws, with every small town constantly under threat from notorious criminals. The reality is, bank heists were few and far between. Notorious bank robberies, like those by Jesse James and his gang, were the exception, not the rule. Most towns had sheriffs and marshals who kept a tight lid on crime, and banks themselves were usually pretty secure. Imagine riding hours or days to rob a bank, only to find it guarded by a few sharpshooters. Not exactly a lucrative career choice. Even the infamous Dalton Gang's attempt to rob 2 banks simultaneously in Coffeyville, Kansas, ended disastrously for the outlaws, with most of the gang getting killed by townsfolk. So while a few famous robberies did happen, the idea of the West being overrun by bank robbers is more fiction than fact. 8. Cowboys, all American. Cowboys are often seen as a quintessentially American creation, embodying the rugged, independent spirit of the United States. If you think cowboys were purely an American invention, think again. The real cowboy culture owes a huge debt to Mexican vaqueros. These skilled cattle herders were the original cowboys, teaching American settlers everything from roping techniques to riding skills. The lariat, the chaps, the sombrero. Many cowboy staples have vaquero origins. The American cowboy simply adapted these traditions, blending them into the rugged image we know today. Rodeos, for example, started as vaquero competitions. So, the next time you think of a cowboy, picture a vaquero too. They're part of the same storied tradition. 7. Iconic cowboy hats. The image of a cowboy is incomplete without the iconic wide-brimmed Stetson hat, a symbol of Western ruggedness and style. The cowboy hat we all know and love didn't start topping heads until the late 19th century. Before that, cowboys sported everything from bowler hats to flat-brimmed sombreros, depending on their background and the job at hand. John B. Stetson's Boss of the Plains hat, introduced in 1865, did become popular, but it took time for the iconic style to take over. Civil War hats, Mexican sombreros, and other practical headgear were more common on the frontier. The wide-brimmed hat that screams cowboy today owes more to Hollywood's influence than to historical fact. So, in reality, the West was a bit more fashionably diverse. 6. Guns galore. The Old West is often thought of as a place where everyone was armed to the teeth, and shootouts in the streets were a daily occurrence. The truth is, many towns had strict gun control ordinances. Dodge City, Tombstone, and Deadwood all had laws that required visitors to check their guns with the sheriff. The idea was to keep the peace and avoid the kind of chaos that Hollywood loves to depict. Most people complied, and disputes were often settled with fists or words, not bullets. Consider the infamous shootout between Wild Bill Hickok and Davis Tutt in Springfield, Missouri. It was a rare event, not the norm. The real-life duel, stemming from a gambling dispute, ended with Hickok killing Tutt from a distance. not the close-range, dramatic showdown often portrayed in movies. The reality was far less glamorous and much messier, with lawmen working tirelessly to maintain order and prevent violence. So, the West wasn't quite as wild as we've been led to believe. 5. Savage stereotypes? Native Americans are often unfairly portrayed as savage and relentless warriors who attacked settlers without provocation. This damaging myth couldn't be further from the truth. Native American tribes were incredibly diverse, with rich cultures, traditions, and societies. Many tribes, like the Cherokee and the Hopi, sought peaceful coexistence and engaged in trade and alliances with settlers. The portrayal of Native Americans as universally hostile is a gross oversimplification and distortion of history. Conflict often arose out of desperation and self-defense as settlers encroached on their lands and resources. Leaders like Chief Joseph of the Nez Perce and Sitting Bull of the Lakota fought to protect their people's way of life, not out of sheer savagery. The true story is one of resilience, culture, and a struggle for survival in the face of overwhelming odds. 4. OK Corral Truth. The gunfight at the OK Corral is one of the most famous events of the Old West, thought to have taken place in the OK Corral itself. The shootout that cemented Wyatt Earp, Doc Holliday, and the Clanton Gang in Western lore actually happened in a vacant lot behind the OK Corral, not inside it. This tiny detail gets lost in the dramatic retellings. The conflict erupted over long-standing tensions and accusations of cattle rustling, but it wasn't as clean-cut as movies suggest. The fight lasted only about 30 seconds, but its legacy has endured for more than a century. The real story is just as gripping as the myth, filled with political intrigue, personal vendettas, and the harsh realities of frontier justice. It's a classic case of truth being just as strange as fiction. 3. Camels in the West. When thinking of transportation in the Old West, horses immediately come to mind as the primary mode of transport and labor. Believe it or not, camels were imported to the American West in the 1850s as part of the U.S. Camel Corps experiment. The idea was that camels, being well suited to arid climates, would be perfect for transporting goods across the harsh deserts of the Southwest. Initially, it seemed like a brilliant plan. Camels could carry heavy loads, travel long distances without water, and navigate rough terrain better than horses. However, the Civil War interrupted the project, and the camels were eventually released into the wild or sold. Some of these camels reportedly roamed the American deserts for years, sparking local legends and ghost stories. So, while horses remained the mainstay, camels had their own brief and bizarre chapter in Western history. 2. Pony Express fail? The Pony Express is celebrated as a pioneering success in rapid mail delivery across the vast distances of the West. The Pony Express is often remembered as a heroic effort to bridge the vast distances of the American frontier. And while it did represent a significant achievement in logistics and bravery, the truth is, it was a financial disaster. Launched in 1860, it lasted a mere 18 months before the transcontinental telegraph rendered it obsolete. Riders faced grueling conditions and the service was costly, both in terms of money and lives. Despite its short lifespan, the Pony Express left an indelible mark on American history. It demonstrated the need for improved communication and paved the way for future innovations. The stories of daring riders braving the wilderness continue to capture our imaginations, even if the business itself was far from a success. 1. Showdown myths. The image of two cowboys facing off in a dusty street at high noon is iconic, with showdown seen as the ultimate way to settle disputes. The classic high noon showdown, with two gunslingers facing off in a deserted street, is more Hollywood than history. Real-life disputes were rarely settled with such dramatic flair. Instead, most conflicts were resolved through negotiation, fistfights, or less public displays of violence. The few recorded showdowns often ended quickly and messily, not with the cinematic tension we see on screen. Think about the lesser-known but equally dramatic duel between Clay Allison and Chunk Colbert in Colfax County, New Mexico. This showdown was the result of a long-standing feud and occurred in a saloon, not in the middle of a dusty street at high noon. The tension was palpable, but the encounter was brief and brutal. with Allison ultimately killing Colbert during a dinner they shared. This wasn't a case of heroic standoff, but rather a stark example of personal vendettas and quick, decisive violence. The reality of such encounters was often far less glamorous and more indicative of the unpredictable and gritty nature of frontier life. The Old West was a blend of ordinary, messy human interactions, far removed from the stylized duels of Hollywood. As we wrap up, let's recap the myths we've debunked today. Which one was your favorite? Let me know in the comments section below. Remember, it's essential to question popular beliefs and seek the truth for yourself. Don't be afraid to challenge the narratives that have been ingrained in society for years. Before you go, don't forget to hit that like button. Share this video with your friends and subscribe to our channel for more mind-blowing myth-debunking content. Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep busting those myths.